Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you've ever felt like there's a family secret lurking just beneath the surface, or if you've ever had to fight for the truth, then this story is for you. Grab a comfy seat, maybe a tissue or two, because today we're diving deep into a tale of family, betrayal, and the powerful legacy of a mother's final words. My name is Harper Sloan, and what you're about to hear is how my brother's wedding, of all places, became the day everything unraveled. I stood at the edge of the dance floor, champagne glass in one hand, my mother's last letter clutched tightly in the other. 6 months ago, as my mother, Eleanor, lay in her hospice bed, she'd squeezed my hand and whispered, "There's a letter for you, Harp. Important things I need you to know when I'm gone." Mom had always been the letter writer in our family, leaving us handwritten notes for every milestone: birthdays, graduations, first heartbreaks. But after she passed, that final letter never appeared. Even though I'd searched everywhere among her belongings, the confusion had slowly transformed into suspicion. When I noticed Ethan, my brother, avoiding any mention of Mom's final days, something felt wrong. But grief has a way of making you doubt your own instincts. Now, watching Ethan twirl his new bride, Tiffany, across the polished floor of the Grand Oaks estate, an exquisite historic estate in Napa Valley, I could see the exact moment he spotted the envelope in my hand. His step faltered. The practiced smile slipped just enough for me to notice. Across the room, filled with twinkling lights and laughter, our eyes met, and I saw something I'd never expected to see in my brother's gaze: fear. Standing there, watching his eyes widen at the envelope, I knew that reading Mom's last words aloud wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, the truth Mom had tried to ensure I'd have. The truth Ethan had deliberately kept from me. The past 6 months had been a maze of grief, doubts, and the growing certainty that my own brother had betrayed me in a way I couldn't have imagined. Mom's letters had always been her way of telling us the things that mattered most, the wisdom she wanted us to carry forward. This final message, the one Ethan had hidden, had to be significant. As the band announced it was time for toasts, my palms began to sweat. I'd been asked to say a few words as sister of the groom, a formality that now seemed like fate. I never imagined my wedding toast would silence a room of 200 people, or that Mom's final gift would change everything between us. But some truths demand to be spoken, even when they arrive at the most inconvenient moments. Growing up, it was always just the three of us: Mom, Ethan, and me. Eleanor Sloan wasn't just any mother. She was the kind who somehow managed to attend every school play while grading college literature essays late into the night. Our charming 2-bedroom bungalow on a tree-lined suburban street in Willow Creek never felt lacking because Mom filled it with books and stories and unconditional love. I was the sensitive one, always quick to cry at movies or when neighborhood kids were mean. From an early age, I became the family peacekeeper, the emotional translator between my analytical mother and my restless brother. Ethan was 3 years older and burning with ambition from the moment he could talk, while I collected stray animals and stayed up reading with a flashlight. Ethan built elaborate business models with his Lego sets and hung newspaper clippings of successful entrepreneurs on his bedroom wall. "Why do we have to buy store-brand everything?" he'd complain as a teenager, embarrassed by our practical economy car and Mom's careful budgeting. Mom would just smile patiently, explaining that her professor's salary went further when we were careful. "Money doesn't define success, Ethan," she'd say, but I could see in his eyes that he disagreed. What defined our family more than anything were Mom's letters. Eleanor Sloan believed deeply in the power of written words, not surprising for a woman who taught American literature at the local university for 30 years. Every birthday, graduation, first day of school, every milestone came with a handwritten letter sealed in an envelope with our names in her elegant script. She saved them for significant moments, which made each one feel like a treasure. The contents always seemed to contain exactly the wisdom we needed at that particular moment in our lives. For my 28th birthday last year, Mom's letter had encouraged me to stop apologizing for my sensitivity. "Your empathy isn't weakness, Harper," she'd written. "It's your superpower in a world that desperately needs more compassion." When Ethan graduated college with his business degree, her letter had been filled with practical advice about integrity in the workplace and warnings about sacrificing personal relationships at the altar of success. 2 years ago, Mom's cancer diagnosis hit like a thunderbolt on a clear day. Stage 4, the doctors said. Treatment options existed, but offered more suffering than promise. Ethan immediately went into problem-solving mode, researching experimental treatments and second opinions, but rarely finding time to actually sit with Mom during her decline. I took a leave of absence from my job as a school counselor and moved back home to care for her. "Ethan is busy establishing his career," Mom would defend him when his visits became increasingly brief and infrequent. "He processes grief differently," but I saw how her eyes followed him to the door each time he left early. As Mom's condition worsened, Ethan became increasingly interested in her financial situation. "Have you updated your will?" he asked during one visit, not even waiting until I had left the room. "We need to be practical about these things." Mom assured him everything was in order. Our family had never been wealthy. The house was Mom's primary asset, paid off just 3 years before her diagnosis. Ethan made no secret of his belief that selling the house immediately after Mom's passing would be the smart financial move. I'd overheard him on the phone discussing property values in our neighborhood, even as Mom was still fighting for her life down the hall. "You've always been anchored to that house because of sentiment," he told me once, "but that's not what Mom would want for either of us." The implication was clear. My career choices in education and counseling were disappointments, while his path in corporate finance was the success story Mom deserved. But Mom never once suggested she was disappointed in my choices. If anything, in her final months, she seemed increasingly determined to have private conversations with me about legacy, values, and what truly mattered. During those last weeks, I noticed Mom frequently asking for her writing box during her more lucid moments. She'd shoo me out of the room, saying she needed to focus. I thought nothing of it then. Mom had always turned to writing as her refuge. Looking back, those quiet moments of concentration, her determination, even through pain medication haze, should have told me she was preparing something important, something that Ethan eventually made sure I never received. The final week of Mom's life exists in my memory as a series of fragments, moments of clarity punctuated by morphine-induced confusion. The hospice nurses had become like family, teaching me how to administer medications and recognize the signs of pain, even when Mom was too proud to admit it. She'd have good hours where we'd read poetry together, or she'd tell stories about her college days, then slip into uncomfortable naps where her breathing seemed too shallow. It was during one of her clear moments that she asked again for her mahogany writing box. "I need to finish something important," she'd said, her voice surprisingly strong. I helped position the box on her lap tray and stepped out to give her privacy, a routine we'd established weeks before. When I returned an hour later, Mom was asleep, the box closed on her nightstand. The night she died, I'd been at her bedside for nearly 48 hours straight. Nurse Karen, the primary nurse, practically ordered me to take a shower and get something to eat from the hospice cafeteria. 20 minutes, Harper. You need to take care of yourself, too. She's stable right now." I reluctantly agreed, kissing Mom's forehead before stepping out. The shower lasted exactly 4 minutes. I grabbed a sandwich I had no appetite for and rushed back, some sixth sense pushing me to hurry. But I was too late. Walking through the door, I saw Ethan already there, his back to me as he stood over Mom's still form. He turned, his eyes red but dry. "She's gone," he said simply. He didn't finish the sentence. I collapsed into the chair by her bed, taking her still warm hand in mine. Only later would I notice that her writing box had been moved from the nightstand to the small closet shelf across the room. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and awkward condolences. Ethan took charge of the arrangements with businesslike efficiency, frequently stepping away to check his phone or have hushed conversations I couldn't quite overhear. Many of Mom's university colleagues attended, sharing stories about her passion for teaching and mentoring students. "Your mother talked about you both constantly," her department chair told me. "She was so proud of you." I nodded through tears, wondering if Ethan heard the same words differently than I did. The reading of the will came 2 weeks later in a distinguished law firm office overlooking the city skyline in downtown San Francisco. Mr. Davies, Mom's longtime attorney, adjusted his glasses and read the document in a formal tone that seemed to distance us from the reality that this was our mother's final communication. The house and majority of financial assets were left to Ethan to secure his future and provide the foundation for his dreams. To me, Mom left her books, her modest jewelry collection, and personal items that carried our family history and values. No mention was made of a personal letter. As the meeting concluded, I asked Mr. Davies directly if Mom had left any personal correspondence or messages. "Nothing filed with the formal will," he answered, glancing at his notes. But Eleanor was quite organized about her affairs. If she intended additional personal communications, they would likely be among her effects. Ethan drove us back to the house in silence. With each passing day, I searched more desperately through Mom's belongings for the letter she'd promised. I carefully examined every book, checked between pages, looked through all her desk drawers and filing cabinets. Nothing. Meanwhile, Ethan wasted no time contacting real estate agents and contractors to prepare the house for sale. "We should maximize the value," he explained, showing me estimates for kitchen updates and bathroom renovations. "The market's hot right now." 3 weeks after the funeral, I overheard Ethan on the phone with his girlfriend, Tiffany. "I've checked everywhere," he said in a low voice from Mom's study. "If there's anything else, we'll find it before the house goes on the market." The conversation shifted when he realized I was in earshot. At the memorial reception, Mom's closest friend Brenda hugged me tightly and said, "Eleanor was so particular about that letter for you, Harper. She worked on it even when she was in terrible pain." Before I could ask for details, Ethan appeared at my elbow with a plate of food, effectively ending the conversation. "Brenda's grief is making her confused," he said later when I brought it up. "Mom didn't leave any letter specifically for you." But his eyes didn't meet mine, and a terrible suspicion began to form in my mind. Could my own brother have taken something Mom had explicitly intended for me? The thought seemed unthinkable, a betrayal too painful to contemplate. Yet with each passing day, as Ethan accelerated plans to empty and sell our childhood home, the empty space where Mom's final words should have been grew more conspicuous. I began to wonder if grief wasn't just changing me, but revealing things about my brother I'd never allowed myself to see clearly before. 3 months after the funeral, I was helping box up the last of Mom's personal items from her bedroom. Ethan had hired professional cleaners and painters to prepare the house for staging, but I'd insisted on packing Mom's clothes and personal items myself. The real estate agent had already found interested buyers, and Ethan was pushing for a quick closing. I sat on the floor next to Mom's nightstand, carefully wrapping her reading glasses and the small clock that had accompanied her through 3 decades of early morning class preparations. Behind the nightstand, I found one of Mom's journals that had fallen into the narrow space between the furniture and the wall. Opening it, I flipped through pages of her elegant handwriting until an entry from just 2 weeks before her death caught my attention. "Finished H's letter today? My heart feels lighter, knowing she'll have these words when I'm gone." My hands trembled as I read the words over and over. Here was proof I hadn't imagined Mom's promise. I immediately took the journal downstairs where Ethan was discussing kitchen staging with the real estate agent. "Look at this," I said, interrupting their conversation and pointing to the entry. Ethan glanced at it casually, his expression revealing nothing. "Mom wrote letters to lots of people." She probably meant Harper Jenkins from her department. They were close. The dismissal was so smooth, so practiced. I almost doubted myself again. Almost. After the agent left, I confronted him directly. "Mom told me she wrote me a final letter. Her journal confirms it. I want to know where it is." Ethan sighed with exaggerated patience. "If there was a letter specifically for you, it would have been with her things. You've gone through everything. It's not healthy to obsess over this, Harp. Mom wouldn't want you creating family drama over an imagined slight." While Ethan was meeting with contractors the next day, I searched Mom's room one final time. In the back of her closet, tucked inside a box of teaching materials, I found several empty envelopes with my name written on them in Mom's handwriting. Practice versions, perhaps, for the final letter. But the letter itself was nowhere to be found. My search for answers led me to lunch with Brenda, Mom's closest friend for over 20 years. "Eleanor was absolutely writing something important for you those final days," Brenda confirmed, stirring her tea with conviction. "She called me about it, wanted my opinion on some of what she planned to say. She said it was crucial you understood certain things after she was gone." Brenda's confirmation gave me both validation and deeper concern. If Mom had indeed written the letter, as everyone remembered, where was it? And why would Ethan pretend it didn't exist? My answer came unexpectedly the following week when I stopped by the house to pick up some photo albums. Letting myself in, I heard Ethan on the phone in the kitchen, unaware of my arrival. "She's still looking for it, but don't worry, she has no proof," he was saying in a hushed voice. "Once the house sells, she'll have to let it go. Yes, I'm sure it was the right decision. You don't understand how Mom always favored her." I must have made some small noise because Ethan suddenly turned, seeing me standing in the doorway. His face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, guilt, then defensive anger. "How long have you been standing there?" he demanded, ending his call abruptly. The confrontation that followed was explosive. All the grief, suspicion, and tension of the past months erupted as I accused him directly of taking Mom's letter. "You've always been Mom's favorite," Ethan shot back, his face flushed. "Every decision she ever made prioritized your feelings, your needs. And now you're inventing this letter because you're jealous that she left me the house." "I'm not inventing anything. Brenda remembers it. Nurse Karen mentioned it. And Mom's own journal confirms it," I was shouting now, something I rarely did. "Why would you keep something like this from me? What could possibly be in that letter that you didn't want me to see?" Ethan's expression hardened. "You're being hysterical. This is exactly why I've been handling the practical matters since Mom died. You're too emotional to think rationally." That night, I reached out to our cousins and Aunt Carol, hoping someone else might have information. The responses were mixed. Aunt Carol recalled Mom mentioning something important she was preparing for Harper, while our cousin Chloe seemed uncomfortable getting involved in what was rapidly becoming a family rift. Some suggested I was making things difficult during a time when families should come together, implying that pursuing the matter was somehow disrespectful to Mom's memory. Ethan had already begun spinning the narrative that I was emotionally unstable, unable to accept Mom's passing, and creating conspiracy theories about hidden messages. When I discovered that Ethan had removed several boxes from Mom's room in the hours after her death, before I'd even arrived home from the hospice center, my suspicions hardened into certainty. My brother had deliberately taken something meant for me, and no amount of family pressure for peace was going to stop me from discovering why. Leaving the family home that evening after another unresolved argument with Ethan, I sat in my car and sobbed. Not just for Mom's absence, but for the bitter realization that the brother I thought I knew was capable of such calculated deception. Whatever was in that letter must be significant enough that Ethan was willing to destroy our relationship to keep it from me. And that realization only strengthened my determination to find the truth. With the family home about to sell and Ethan becoming increasingly hostile whenever I mentioned the letter, I knew I needed to expand my investigation beyond our immediate family circle. My first step was contacting Nurse Karen, Mom's primary hospice nurse during those final weeks. We met at a bustling Starbucks downtown where she remembered me instantly and embraced me warmly. "Your mother was such a fighter," she said, stirring honey into her tea. Even during her worst pain days, she insisted on completing certain tasks. When I asked about the writing, Karen nodded vigorously. "Oh yes, the letter. Your mother was absolutely determined to finish something for you specifically, Harper. I remember because we had to adjust her pain medication schedule around it. She wanted to be lucid enough to write, but comfortable enough to concentrate. She mentioned several times how important it was that you receive her words." This confirmation fueled my next steps. I made an appointment with Mr. Davies, Mom's attorney, hoping he might have additional insights beyond the formal will reading. His distinguished office felt colder now than it had months ago, less a place of proper protocol and more a sterile repository of final wishes. "Miss Sloane," he began formally, "I've reviewed your mother's file thoroughly. While she did update her will about 3 months before her passing, she didn't file any additional personal correspondence with my office." As I turned to leave, disappointed, he added, "However, Eleanor did mention she was preparing personal communications outside of the legal documents. She was quite particular about keeping certain matters separate from the formal inheritance process." I asked about the boxes Ethan had removed from Mom's room immediately after her death, but Mr. Davies couldn't help with that. "I can only speak to the legal documents Miss Sloane entrusted to this office," he said, but his expression suggested he understood there might be more to the story. My next step was thoroughly searching my own apartment just in case the letter had somehow been delivered there without my knowledge. I emptied drawers, checked inside books, went through old mail, nothing. Growing increasingly frustrated, I reached out to Professor David Miller, one of Mom's longtime colleagues from the university English department. We met at the Daily Grind, a cozy local cafe near the university campus where Mom had graded papers for decades. "Eleanor definitely mentioned leaving you something that would help you understand everything," he confirmed, pushing his glasses up on his nose. "It came up during our last lunch together about 3 weeks before she passed. She seemed relieved to have finished it. Said it contained important truths you deserve to know." While I was methodically pursuing these leads, life continued moving forward. Ethan and Tiffany announced their engagement via social media, with a wedding planned just 6 months after Mom's death. "We don't want to wait," Tiffany wrote in the announcement. "Life is too short, as we've all learned this year." The timing felt rushed and insensitive, but I kept my thoughts to myself. Surprisingly, Tiffany reached out to me personally, suggesting lunch to bond as future sisters-in-law and heal any family tensions before the wedding. I agreed, hoping she might inadvertently provide information about Ethan's actions. We met at an upscale restaurant Tiffany selected, her diamond engagement ring catching the light as she nervously arranged her silverware. "Ethan is so happy you agreed to meet," she began after ordering salads for both of us without asking my preference. "He's been worried about you since Eleanor passed. He says you've been struggling more than expected." I smiled tightly, recognizing my brother's narrative strategy. "Grief affects everyone differently," I replied neutrally. "How are the wedding plans coming along?" Tiffany launched into details about venues and flowers, visibly relieved by the subject change. As she described Ethan's involvement in the planning, she mentioned casually, "He's been so much more relaxed since settling all the estate matters. He was so stressed about finding some letter or papers your mom mentioned. But now he says, everything's resolved satisfactorily. I nearly choked on my water. What letter was Ethan looking for? I asked, struggling to keep my voice casual. Tiffany's expression shifted, realizing she'd said something significant. Oh, just some estate documents or something, she backtracked quickly. You know how Ethan is about financial security. Let's talk about your bridesmaid dress instead. In the weeks that followed, I explored every possible avenue, checking Mom's bank accounts for safe deposit boxes, trying to access her email accounts, even visiting her favorite library where she sometimes kept personal notes in books she loved. The evidence continued mounting that Ethan had deliberately concealed Mom's final letter to me. Aunt Carol called one evening, her voice hesitant. I've been thinking about what you asked about Eleanor wanting to set things right with you before the end. She did mention something like that when I visited last Christmas. She said there were things you deserved to know. History that would help you understand certain family decisions. I didn't think much of it then. But with everything you've been saying, the conversation confirmed what I already believed, but solving the mystery was taking an emotional toll. Friends commented on my weight loss and dark circles under my eyes. My work as a school counselor suffered as I found it increasingly difficult to focus on my students' problems while my own family drama consumed my thoughts. The stress manifested physically. Tension, headaches, insomnia, a persistent knot in my stomach that tightened whenever I thought about Ethan's betrayal. Some family members suggested I was becoming obsessed, that pursuing this imagined letter was preventing me from properly grieving Mom's death. Even if there was a letter, what good does it do now? My cousin Chloe argued during a phone call. Eleanor is gone. Shouldn't you focus on healing rather than creating more family division? But I couldn't let it go. Mom had wanted me to have those final words. She'd worked through pain and medication fog to ensure I received whatever message was in that letter. Every new confirmation from another source strengthened my conviction that Ethan had deliberately intercepted something meant for me. The question remained, why? What could possibly be in Mom's final letter that would make Ethan hide it from me? Whatever his reasons, I faced a critical decision point. Either abandon the search as my family was pressuring me to do, or escalate my efforts despite the growing isolation and strain. Mom had always taught us that truth matters, even when it's uncomfortable. Looking at her photo on my nightstand one evening, I made my choice. I'm going to find what you wanted me to know, Mom, I whispered to her smiling image. No matter what it takes. 8 months after Mom's death, a cream-colored envelope arrived in my mailbox, embossed with elegant script announcing Ethan and Tiffany's wedding. Despite our ongoing conflict, they had formally invited me to celebrate their union of hearts and futures at the Grand Oaks estate. My first impulse was to RSVP with a definitive no. How could I stand alongside my brother, pretending everything was fine between us, knowing he'd deliberately kept Mom's final words from me? But something stopped me from immediately declining. Perhaps it was Mom's voice in my head, always encouraging reconciliation and understanding. Or maybe it was the growing certainty that the wedding might provide opportunities to discover information I couldn't access otherwise. After a sleepless night considering my options, I decided to accept the invitation. Before committing to attend, however, I made one final attempt to search the family home, which had been renovated but hadn't yet sold due to some unexpected permit issues. Using my key, I entered the house on a Tuesday when I knew Ethan would be at work. The interior was barely recognizable. Walls painted in neutral grays and whites, new fixtures, staged furniture arranged to maximize the sense of space. All traces of our childhood had been erased along with Mom's presence. Standing in what had been Mom's study, now transformed into a home office nook according to the real estate flyers, I noticed something odd. Mom's antique writing desk, a cherished piece she'd inherited from Grandma Dorothy, was missing. According to the will, Furniture had been divided between Ethan and me, with most larger pieces sold, but I distinctly remembered that desk being marked for sale since neither of us had initially claimed it. So why wasn't it staged with the house or in storage with the other furniture awaiting auction? A quick text to the estate sale coordinator confirmed my suspicion. Ethan had decided to keep the desk after all, moving it to his sleek penthouse apartment in a trendy Soma high-rise, just 3 weeks after Mom's death. The timing aligned perfectly with when I'd begun asking about the missing letter. This new information led me to make a bold decision. While Ethan and Tiffany attended a wedding planning appointment that weekend, I used the spare key I'd surreptitiously taken from Tiffany's purse during our lunch to enter their condo. The modern high-rise unit was immaculately decorated in Tiffany's minimalist style, with few personal touches visible in the open-concept living area. I located Mom's writing desk in the spare bedroom they were using as Ethan's home office. The beautiful cherrywood piece looked out of place among the sleek contemporary furniture, but it was undeniably Mom's desk, complete with the small scratch on the right corner from when I'd accidentally dropped a paperweight as a child. I had just begun carefully examining the drawers when I heard the front door open. Panic shot through me as Ethan's voice carried down the hallway. I barely had time to close the desk drawer and hide in the adjacent bathroom before Ethan entered the office. Through the partially open door, I watched my brother sit at Mom's desk, opening his laptop while continuing his conversation with Tiffany. "Harper's still obsessed with that stupid letter," he was saying, his voice a mixture of annoyance and something else, anxiety perhaps. "She mentioned it again when she RSVP'd for the wedding." Tiffany's voice drifted in from further away. "Did Eleanor really leave her something valuable?" "Is that why you're so worried about her finding it?" Ethan didn't immediately answer, the silence heavy with implication. Finally, he sighed. "It's complicated. Look, can we talk about something else? The wedding planner needs decisions on the menu by tomorrow." I remained frozen in the bathroom until they eventually moved to the kitchen, their voices becoming indistinct murmurs. I was contemplating how to escape when the bathroom door suddenly swung open fully, revealing Tiffany's startled face. "Harper," she gasped, her eyes widening in shock and confusion. "What are you doing here?" Within moments, Ethan appeared behind her, his expression morphing from confusion to fury as he realized what was happening. "You broke into our home?" he demanded incredulously. "Have you completely lost your mind?" There was no plausible explanation I could offer. Caught red-handed, I decided truth was my only option. "I know you took Mom's letter to me, Ethan. I know you've been lying about it for months. I just want what Mom intended me to have." Ethan's face flushed with anger, but something shifted in his expression. After a tense moment, he said, "Fine. Yes, I might have seen a letter addressed to you among Mom's things, but that was months ago, and I honestly can't remember where it is now." This partial admission, after months of complete denial, only inflamed my anger. "You can't remember. You deliberately kept Mom's final words from me, and now you expect me to believe you just misplaced them? What was in that letter that you didn't want me to see, Ethan?" Our confrontation escalated, with Tiffany eventually stepping between us, looking bewildered and distressed by the family drama she'd marched into. Ethan eventually made an insincere promise to look for the letter before the wedding, clearly hoping to defuse the situation and get me to leave. Back in my apartment that evening, I called my therapist for an emergency session. Dr. Mitchell had been helping me navigate grief over Mom's death, but now our sessions increasingly focused on the unhealthy family dynamics the loss had exposed. "Family secrets often have deep roots," she observed, after I recounted the confrontation at Ethan's condo. "Your mother may have wanted to break patterns of secrecy with this final letter. Consider what it means that your brother is working so hard to maintain those patterns." The following weekend, Ethan flew to South Beach, Miami for his bachelor party. With Tiffany visiting her parents in the affluent North Shore suburbs of Chicago, I knew their condo would be empty. Perhaps my last opportunity for a thorough search. Using the key I'd kept, I spent 6 methodical hours examining every inch of Mom's writing desk and Ethan's home office. I found no letter, but tucked in a small hidden compartment of the desk was something else. A receipt for a storage unit rental dated just 2 days after Mom's death. The unit was in Ethan's name only, despite the estate technically belonging to both of us until distributions were finalized. Sitting on the floor of my brother's office, staring at this piece of paper, the full extent of his deception hit me with physical force. He hadn't just impulsively taken something in a moment of grief or confusion. He had systematically concealed Mom's final message to me, going so far as to rent a separate self-storage unit complex on the outskirts of the city to keep items away from my knowledge. It was calculated, deliberate, and spoke to a level of betrayal I hadn't wanted to acknowledge, even in my darkest suspicions. Driving home, I considered my options. I could confront Ethan with this new evidence, but his pattern of denial and deflection suggested that would lead nowhere. I could seek legal intervention, but without proof of what specifically had been taken, that path seemed equally futile, and looming over everything was his wedding, now just 3 weeks away. Whatever Mom had wanted to tell me must be significant enough that Ethan believed it would damage his carefully constructed narrative, perhaps even threatening his inheritance or relationship with Tiffany. Sitting at my kitchen table that night, surrounded by notes from my investigation, I made my decision. Truth had to come before family peace, especially when that peace was built on deception. The storage unit receipt provided the next step in my search, and Ethan's wedding might provide the perfect opportunity for the truth to finally come to light. With the wedding just 1 week away, I took a personal day from work and drove to the self-storage unit complex on the outskirts of the city. The receipt I'd found in Ethan's desk drawer included the unit number and access code, eliminating the need to explain my presence to facility management. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the rows of identical orange doors as I located Unit 237. My hands trembled slightly as I punched in the code, hearing the satisfying click of the lock disengaging. Rolling up the door revealed stacks of boxes and several pieces of furniture from our family home, items that should have been part of the shared estate but had been sequestered here by Ethan. I recognized Mom's reading chair, several framed family photos that had hung in our hallway, and at least a dozen boxes labeled in Ethan's handwriting, Eleanor's papers, family documents, photo albums, and most tellingly, personal effects, important. For 3 hours, I methodically went through each box, documenting the contents with my phone camera in case I needed evidence later. Ethan had indeed been thorough, removing items that held both sentimental and potentially monetary value. Mom's first edition book collection, her antique jewelry beyond the few pieces I'd received, family heirlooms I hadn't even realized were missing from the house during my previous searches. Each new discovery deepened my understanding of how calculated my brother's actions had been. He hadn't just taken a letter, he'd systematically removed anything that might have special meaning to me or contain Mom's final message. In a box labeled Eleanor's Books, Valuable, I found Mom's leather-bound collection of classic literature, including her prized first edition of Steinbeck. Toward the bottom of this box was a worn copy of Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, one of Mom's favorites that she often quoted in her university lectures. Something about its placement, tucked beneath more valuable books rather than with them, caught my attention. Opening the book, I noticed a peculiar bookmark, not the usual library receipt or random scrap of paper Mom typically used, but a carefully folded piece of stationery in her favorite cream color. My heart racing, I carefully removed it to find not a bookmark, but an envelope sealed and addressed to me in Mom's unmistakable handwriting. She had hidden her final letter in the one place she knew Ethan would be least likely to look. Inside a book of poetry he would consider sentimental rather than valuable. My hands trembled as I held the envelope, emotions flooding through me. Vindication that I hadn't imagined Mom's promise, anger at Ethan's deception, and overwhelming grief at finally holding the words Mom had fought through pain to leave for me. I debated whether to open it immediately or wait for a more private setting. The storage unit felt wrong somehow. Too cold. Too associated with Ethan's betrayal rather than Mom's love. Carefully placing the letter in my purse, I reboxed everything exactly as I'd found it, making sure to leave no evidence of my search. Sitting in my car afterward, the unopened letter feeling almost alive in my bag beside me, I drove to Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, Mom's favorite place to grade papers on pleasant afternoons. Finding a quiet bench overlooking the water, I finally allowed myself to open the envelope that had caused so much conflict over the past 8 months. My dearest Harper, Mom's handwriting began, clear despite what must have been significant pain when she wrote it. If you're reading this, I've left this world, but I hope I've left you something more valuable than worldly possessions, the truth you deserve to know. The letter continued for 4 pages, revealing a family secret I'd never suspected. Grandma Dorothy, Mom's mother, had left Eleanor a significant inheritance when she passed 15 years ago. But Mom had intentionally kept these funds separate from her marriage to our father, rooting them through a trust after their divorce when Ethan was 12 and I was 9. Your father's financial irresponsibility nearly destroyed us, Mom explained. He drained our family accounts twice before the divorce, leaving us in precarious circumstances. When Mother's inheritance came, I made the difficult choice to shield those funds completely. Mom explained that she'd used portions of the inheritance to fund Ethan's college education and business school, a fact he was aware of but had been asked to keep confidential. Ethan has already received his portion of the inheritance through his education. What remains is in a trust that will transfer to you upon my death. I've arranged with Mr. Davies to contact you with the details 6 months after my passing, enough time for grief's sharpest edges to soften. The revelation stunned me. There was a trust in my name that Ethan knew about but couldn't access, and likely the reason he had hidden the letter. Mom continued, I fear my decision to financially support Ethan's education while keeping the remainder for your future has created an imbalance between you two. The house is his in the will because I've provided for you differently. Neither of you has been shortchanged, though I know Ethan may feel differently. The letter's final paragraphs brought tears streaming down my face. I've always felt guilty that I sometimes favored Ethan emotionally after the divorce, a misguided attempt to compensate for his father's absence. You were always so naturally giving, so empathetic. It was easy to lean on your strength. Too easy. I asked too much of you, my sweet girl, and gave too many passes to your brother's more difficult behaviors. This trust is not just financial provision, but my acknowledgement that you deserve support too. My deepest wish is that you and Ethan find your way back to the closeness you once shared as children. Money has a way of revealing character, but it doesn't have to destroy love. I hope you'll both choose healing over hurt, understanding over judgment. Sitting on that park bench, the pieces finally came together. Ethan had read the letter after Mom's death, discovering the trust's existence, but not how to access it. His frantic searching of her papers, the storage unit, his insistence on controlling the estate, all attempts to find information about money he believed should be his. Yet, according to Mom's letter, he'd already received his share through his education, while mine remained in trust. Mom's elegant solution to fairly divide her assets had become the source of bitter division because of Ethan's secrecy and greed. The letter wasn't just about money, though. It contained Mom's reflections on our childhood, acknowledgments of her parenting struggles as a single mother, and deeply personal wisdom she'd wanted to share. These were the words I'd been missing during my grief. The final conversation death had denied us, the emotional inheritance Ethan had tried to keep from me. As I carefully refolded the letter, a sense of clarity settled over me. This wasn't just about exposing Ethan's deception anymore. It was about honoring Mom's final wish, that truth might ultimately lead to healing between her children. But first, the truth needed to come to light. After months of gaslighting and denial, I needed witnesses to reality. Ethan's wedding toast suddenly seemed like perfect poetic justice, a public moment to ensure the truth couldn't be denied or manipulated any further. I knew this decision might permanently damage my relationship with my brother, but continuing to participate in his web of lies would damage my relationship with myself even more deeply. Mom had valued truth above comfort. In that moment, sitting with her final words, I chose to do the same. 3 days before the wedding, I scheduled an urgent meeting with Mr. Davies, bringing Mom's letter with me. The attorney's eyebrows raised perceptibly as he scanned the contents, nodding occasionally.
"Yes, this aligns with the separate instructions Eleanor left with our office," he confirmed, removing his glasses to polish them thoughtfully. "The trust exists and has been waiting for the 6-month period to elapse before contacting you. I believe that date would be next week, actually." Mr. Davies pulled up documents on his computer, confirming the details Mom had outlined in her letter.
"Your brother has indeed made several inquiries about additional accounts or trusts in recent months," he added, his tone carefully neutral, but his expression suggesting he now understood the situation more clearly. "I was bound by client confidentiality not to disclose the trust's existence to anyone but you, and only after the specified waiting period." Leaving the attorney's office with copies of the trust documentation, I felt simultaneously vindicated and troubled. The trust was real, just as Mom had written, with clear instructions that it was intended for me alone. Ethan's deliberate concealment of the letter made perfect, if disturbing, sense. He'd discovered Mom's plan to divide her assets differently than he'd expected, and had tried to find ways to access the trust himself. The next day, I checked into the Fairmont San Francisco, a landmark hotel with iconic views, where out-of-town wedding guests were staying. The elegant riverfront property had been Tiffany's selection, with its ballrooms and manicured grounds serving as backdrop for the wedding festivities. My room was on the same floor as several family members, creating a strange bubble of forced normalcy whenever we passed in the hallways. The rehearsal dinner that evening was the first time I'd seen Ethan since discovering the letter.
He performed his role as beaming groom-to-be perfectly, navigating the room with Tiffany on his arm. When he approached me, his smile remained fixed, though his eyes assessed me carefully. "Glad you could make it," he said, embracing me in a hug that felt mechanical.
"Tiffany was worried you might not come." His attention turned decidedly cooler when no one else was within earshot. "Found anything interesting in Mom's things lately?" he asked quietly, swirling the whiskey in his glass. The question confirmed what I already knew. He was aware of the storage unit visit.
Either he had security cameras or had returned to find subtle evidence of my search. "Nothing you haven't already seen," I replied evenly, watching his expression. The slight tightening around his eyes told me everything.
Back in my hotel room that night, I pulled out Mom's letter and began drafting my wedding toast. The traditional role of sister of the groom would be to share warm memories and offer blessings for the couple's future. What I was planning deviated dramatically from convention, and I wrestled with the ethics of using such a public moment for confrontation. Was I being vindictive? Would Mom approve of this approach? I called Brenda, Mom's best friend, who had also been invited to the wedding. I found the letter, I told her, explaining the circumstances and my plan. But I'm struggling with how to handle this. What would Mom want? Brenda was silent for a long moment. Eleanor valued truth over comfortable lies, she finally said. She believed that real healing couldn't happen without honesty, even when it was painful. But she also believed in giving people the opportunity to do the right thing themselves first. This conversation reinforced my conviction that truth needed witnesses. After months of gaslighting, Ethan had had numerous opportunities to return the letter, admit his actions, or simply tell the truth. Instead, he doubled down on deception, manipulating family members into seeing me as emotionally unstable rather than admitting his betrayal. Through the night, I worked on multiple drafts of what I would say, trying to balance truth with grace, exposure with dignity. The wedding speech needed to reveal Ethan's actions without descending into pettiness or pure revenge. Mom wouldn't want her final message weaponized, even in the service of truth. The morning of the wedding dawned with clear skies and unseasonably warm weather for late autumn. As I dressed in the bridesmaid's gown Tiffany had selected, a flattering but uncomfortably expensive sapphire blue silk, I experienced serious doubts about my plan. Was I really prepared to potentially ruin my brother's wedding day? Would this public revelation cause irreparable damage to our already strained relationship? My hand hovered over Mom's letter, now placed in an elegant envelope that matched the wedding stationery. Perhaps there was still time to choose a different path, to approach Ethan privately once more. Then I remembered Mom's words about honesty being the foundation of healing, and Ethan's repeated choices to lie, manipulate, and gaslight rather than acknowledge the truth. Some lessons could only be learned through consequences. Tucking the letter into my evening clutch, I fastened Mom's locket around my neck, a small oval containing tiny photos of Ethan and me as children. It had been her daily accessory, her way of keeping us close, even when her work took her away from home. Looking at those innocent faces, I wondered when we'd lost the simple connection of childhood. When had money and status become more important to Ethan than family honesty? Mom's true legacy wasn't financial at all, I realized. It was her unwavering commitment to truth and integrity, values I couldn't compromise now when they mattered most. Standing in that hotel room, I made my final decision. The wedding toast wouldn't be about revenge or public humiliation. It would be about honoring Mom's wishes by ensuring her final words weren't suppressed or twisted for someone else's benefit. It would be about breaking the pattern of secrets and lies that had slowly poisoned our family connections. As I applied a final touch of lipstick and gathered my things, I took one last look in the mirror. "This is for you, Mom," I whispered to my reflection, seeing echoes of Eleanor's determined expression in my own face. "The truth you fought to share won't stay buried any longer." The ceremony itself was undeniably beautiful. Tiffany had spared no expense, transforming the hotel's garden pavilion into a fairy tale setting with thousands of white roses and crystal decorations catching the afternoon sunlight. Ethan looked genuinely happy as his bride walked down the aisle, and I found myself wondering if Tiffany knew the full extent of his deception, or if she too was being kept in the dark about certain aspects of his character. Throughout the ceremony, I remained composed in my position among the bridesmaids, smiling appropriately for photos and performing all expected duties. No one watching would have suspected the weight of Mom's letter in my evening purse, or the carefully prepared words I would soon deliver. The cocktail hour that followed was a masterclass in navigating family tensions. Beneath a veneer of celebration, relatives who had sided with Ethan in our ongoing conflict greeted me with cautious politeness, while others who had remained neutral seemed genuinely happy to see signs of family reconciliation in my attendance. "Your mother would be so happy to see you both together on this day," Aunt Carol remarked, gesturing toward Ethan across the room. If only she knew the full story, I thought, sipping champagne slowly to maintain perfect clarity for what was to come. The grand ballroom had been transformed for the reception with elaborate table settings, mood lighting, and a live band playing softly as guests found their assigned seats. I was placed at the family table near the front, directly across from Ethan and Tiffany. Throughout the multiple dinner courses, I noticed Ethan watching me carefully whenever he thought I wasn't looking, perhaps trying to gauge my mood or intentions. Did he suspect what I had planned? Was he worried about what I might say in my upcoming toast? The best man's speech was predictably filled with college anecdotes and gentle ribbing about Ethan's workaholic tendencies, while the maid of honor brought tears to Tiffany's eyes with memories of their lifelong friendship. When the master of ceremonies announced, "And now a toast from Harper, sister of the groom," the room quieted with polite attention. With deliberate calmness, I approached the microphone, champagne glass in one hand and Mom's letter in the elegant envelope in the other. Ethan's expression transformed instantly as he recognized what I was holding, the color draining from his face so dramatically that Tiffany placed a concerned hand on his arm. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate Ethan and Tiffany," I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "As many of you know, our mother Eleanor passed away earlier this year. She was a woman who believed deeply in the power of written words to convey what matters most, especially during life's most significant moments." I paused, making eye contact with various family members. Mom had a tradition of writing letters for important occasions, sharing her wisdom and love when we needed it most. Before she died, she told me she had written one final letter that I would receive after she was gone, a letter containing truths she wanted me to know. From the corner of my eye, I could see Ethan shifting in his seat, his jaw clenched tight. For 8 months, that letter remained missing, despite Mom's clear intention that I should have it. Today, I want to share with all of you that I finally found that letter, hidden inside one of Mom's favorite books, which had been removed from our family home and placed in storage without my knowledge. Audible gasps came from several tables, particularly from those familiar with the ongoing tension in our family. Ethan half rose from his seat, but Tiffany's father, seated beside him, placed a restraining hand on his arm, whispering something that made him reluctantly settle back into his chair. Opening the envelope, I began to read selected passages from Mom's letter. I chose carefully, focusing on her words about family healing and forgiveness rather than details about the financial arrangements. Eleanor wrote, "My deepest hope is that you both choose understanding over judgment, that you recognize how fear can damage even the closest relationships. The true wealth I hope to leave you was never material. It was the capacity for honesty and the courage to face difficult truths." I explained the basic situation, how Mom had divided her assets differently than stated in the formal will, with Ethan receiving the house and educational support, while a separate trust had been established for me. Mom wanted us both provided for equally, though differently. She trusted us to understand her reasons and respect her wishes. The reception hall had fallen completely silent, hundreds of eyes moving between Ethan's increasingly furious expression and my steady gaze. Tiffany's confusion was transforming into something harder as she processed the implications of what she was hearing. "I'm sharing this today not to create division, but to end it," I continued. "Mom believed that healing requires truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. For months,
I've been told I was imagining things.
That I was emotionally unstable for believing Mom left me a final message. Today, I wanted witnesses to the reality that this letter does exist, that Mom's final wishes deserve to be honored, and that reconciliation can only begin with honesty. I concluded by reading Mom's final line. The true inheritance I leave is not money, but the choice to break cycles of mistrust. Choose wisely, my beloved children. Ethan abruptly pushed back from the table, napkin thrown down beside his barely touched wedding cake. Without a word to anyone, he strode from the room. Tiffany, hesitating only briefly, followed him. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only when I quietly thanked everyone and returned to my seat. What happened next was a blur of reactions. Some family members approached with shocked expressions and questions, others with knowing nods of support. Brenda squeezed my hand, whispering, "Eleanor would be proud of your courage." Tiffany's parents huddled in concerned conversation, occasionally glancing my way with unreadable expressions. Within 20 minutes, I had gathered my belongings and slipped away from the reception, the weight of 8 months of investigation and confrontation suddenly lifting from my shoulders. Back in my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my bridesmaid gown, wondering if I had made the right choice. The public revelation had provided the validation I'd sought after months of gaslighting. But had it truly honored Mom's wishes for eventual reconciliation between her children? Had I permanently destroyed any chance of rebuilding a relationship with my brother? The mixture of vindication, regret, relief, and uncertainty kept me awake most of the night, replaying the moment Ethan's face had changed from confusion to recognition to fury as I held up Mom's letter. Whatever happened next would be beyond my control. But for the first time since Mom's death, I felt I had fulfilled my promise to her, to seek the truth she had fought through pain to provide. The comfortable lies had been exposed. And now the difficult work of genuine healing could begin, whatever form that might take. The morning after the wedding, I was packing my suitcase to check out when an unexpected knock came at my hotel room door. Opening it revealed Tiffany, still in yesterday's makeup, but changed into casual clothes. Her eyes were red from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked simply. I invited her in, unsure what to expect. She declined coffee, sitting stiffly on the edge of the desk chair. "I want to see the entire letter," she said without preamble. "I need to understand exactly what happened." I hesitated only briefly before retrieving Mom's letter and the legal documentation Mr. Davies had provided. Tiffany read everything silently, her expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally a resigned understanding. "Ethan told me your mother left everything to him because you weren't financially responsible," she finally said, handing the papers back. "He said you were inventing drama about a letter because you were jealous and unstable with grief." She paused, twisting her new wedding ring. "Last night, after we left the reception, he admitted he found the letter while you were getting coffee for the nurses. He read it, panicked about the trust implications, and hid it, thinking he could find a way to access the funds if you didn't know about them." Tiffany explained that the reception had ended early, with guests departing amid awkward explanations about Ethan being overwhelmed with emotion. Their honeymoon to the Maldives had been postponed indefinitely. "He's been obsessed with finding Eleanor's secret account for months," she admitted. "I thought it was just grief making him fixated on closing the estate properly. I had no idea he was deliberately keeping something from you." After Tiffany left, I returned home to my apartment, attempting to resume normal life with a new perspective. The week that followed was eerily quiet. No calls from Ethan, no messages from extended family. As though everyone was collectively processing what had happened, I focused on my counseling work, finding new resonance with students navigating their own family conflicts. 10 days after the wedding, my doorbell rang on Sunday afternoon. Opening it revealed Ethan, unshaven and visibly exhausted. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual confidence. Our conversation began awkwardly, with accusations and defensiveness from both sides. But as hours passed, something shifted. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or the relief of no longer maintaining pretenses, but Ethan eventually broke down in a way I'd never witnessed before. "I found the letter while you were getting the nurse's coffee," he admitted, confirming Tiffany's account. "I read it, and when I saw the trust information, I panicked. We were in debt from the condo down payment and my business loan. I thought if I could find documentation about the trust before you knew it existed." He explained how his initial impulse to temporarily hide the letter had snowballed into months of deception. He couldn't figure out how to escape. Each time I asked about it, admitting the truth seemed worse than continuing the lie. Then family started taking sides, and suddenly I was trapped in this narrative that I was emotionally unstable and inventing things. While his explanation didn't excuse his actions, it provided context I hadn't fully understood. Ethan had been privately struggling with business setbacks and had over-leveraged himself financially, counting on Mom's entire estate to resolve his debts. The letter revealing a separate trust for me had triggered his deepest financial insecurities. "Mom always made everything look easy," he said, staring into the coffee cup I'd given him. "She managed to put me through business school, maintain the house, help you with your master's degree, all on a professor's salary. I never understood how she did it until I read that letter, finding out there was family money that had been kept secret, even from us." We spent hours talking through childhood memories, discovering how differently we'd experienced the same events. Where I'd seen Mom as supportive of both her children, Ethan had perceived favoritism toward me emotionally while he received practical support. His relationship with money had been shaped by Dad's abandonment and the financial insecurity that followed, creating a desperate need for control and security I hadn't fully recognized. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right now," Ethan said, as evening shadows lengthened across my living room. "What I did was wrong, period. But I would like a chance to try to make things right somehow." We agreed to attend family therapy sessions together, a neutral space to address the damage done and determine if rebuilding was possible. Neither of us was ready for immediate forgiveness or complete atonement. We occupied an uncomfortable middle ground of tentative truth-telling. Over the following 6 months, our relationship evolved slowly. The trust Mr. Davies formally transferred to me was significant, but not the fortune Ethan had imagined. I used portions of it thoughtfully for purposes Mom would have approved. Establishing a small scholarship in her name at the university where she taught, investing in my continued education, and creating financial security without extravagance. Ethan worked to rebuild his integrity, starting with complete financial honesty with Tiffany and addressing the debts that had driven his desperate actions. Their marriage survived, though with a new, more realistic foundation. During one therapy session, Ethan admitted, "I've spent my life chasing financial security because I thought that's what would make Mom proud. I completely missed that she valued honesty above material success." On the first anniversary of Mom's death, I began a practice she would have appreciated: writing letters to my future self, preserving wisdom I hope to remember during difficult times ahead. Ethan and I met at Golden Gate Park, still different in fundamental ways, but no longer strangers. We took turns reading passages from her books and letters, acknowledging how her final message had ultimately fulfilled its purpose, though not in the way any of us could have predicted. Mom's true gift hadn't been financial at all. It was the painful but necessary lesson that healing requires honesty, not comfortable secrets. I learned to establish boundaries while allowing for growth, to understand without excusing, to hold people accountable while recognizing their capacity for change. As I placed fresh flowers on her grave that afternoon, I whispered the wisdom she had tried to impart in her final letter. "Truth may hurt at first, but secrets poison forever. Looking at Ethan, waiting respectfully at a distance, I realized Mom's deepest wish was gradually being fulfilled, not through pretended harmony, but through the harder, more authentic work of rebuilding trust after betrayal. Some inheritances, it turns out, take a lifetime to fully claim. Wow, what a journey, right? This story truly shows how powerful hidden truths can be in a family. Have you ever experienced a family conflict where the truth was hidden to keep the peace? How did you handle it? Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most important healing. If Harper's journey resonated with you, if you found value in this story of uncovering truth and the courage it takes to honor what's right, even when it's painful, then please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more stories about family dynamics, difficult truths, and finding your strength. Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this story. What surprised you the most? Have you ever had to choose truth over comfort? I love reading your insights. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please share this video with them. Spreading these real-life lessons can make a huge difference. Thank you so much for listening to this deeply personal account. Remember, genuine relationships must be built on honesty, even when that honesty initially creates discomfort. Wishing you courage in your own journey toward authentic connections. I'll see you in the next one.